Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Conversations. My name is Suresh Kochattil. Today we have David Vance, a political commentator, a writer, and a podcaster from the United Kingdom. I guess not a great place to be right now about what is going on around there, but still, it's good to have David on the show, and I've been told a lot of good things about him. So, David, you come with pretty high expectations. So, let's start. And he's also very prominent on Twitter, or what's called X now, and other platforms. Of course, Twitter is not a favorite of the UK government right now. You know the reasons why. So, but
Yeah.
David, let me start with you. Elections, yeah, Labour got a thumping majority. What we call a 400 par in India, which means 400 plus didn't happen in India, but it happened in the UK. So maybe the wrong end of the stick. But
Yeah.
ever since I remember Rishi Sunak's statement, and even I saw it in a couple of newspaper headlines, which said that Keir Starmer will make a mess out of things in 100 days. I think we didn't have to wait for 100 days.
30.
Why did this all start? Was it a powder keg sitting there waiting to explode? Or,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
go
really
on.
good it's a really good question. It's a very good question because in the space of just over 30 days, the UK has been plunged into chaos, apparent, almost anarchy, destruction. All of that's been happening. I think that if we're being honest about it, the truth of the matter is that years and years of mass migration, unwanted mass migration, has caused a big problem across the UK, especially as a lot of those people coming in have not assimilated into the UK. They lead separate, they have separate communities, they live their lives separately. Some of them don't even speak English, and that's been happening under several UK administrations. But under this new Labour administration, we have to remember that basically 75% of British Muslims vote Labour. So they rely on the Muslim vote. And they lost a bit of it in the recent election. So I think they're quite keen to curry favour with the Muslim vote. So the story goes really it's quite tragic, really, because it starts with the slaughter of 3 young girls at a little dance school just over a week ago in a place called Southport. And they were, as far as we understand, the slaughter of these little girls was carried out by a second-generation Rwandan migrant. And people were very upset about that. And people took to the streets to protest. The government then clamped down on the people protesting, accused them of being far right. And it's basically gone from bad to worse since then. The government has conjured up a demon that doesn't exist, the EDL. This demon, far right, hasn't been in existence since 2014, but the deep state has put it in place. It's the bad guy, apparently. We don't even talk about the slaughter of the little girls. And that's where, and you've seen now the remarkable developments in the past few days. We're being told in the UK, if we go on X/Twitter and we post anything at all, basically we could be going to prison. So that the UK is morphing into a full-on authoritarian, despotic tyranny. That's the truth of the matter, and that's where we are.
I mean, I thought this happens in North Korea or China because you protest against the government, and next moment you're in jail, or maybe even Russia these days. But
Yeah, I mean,
something like this happening in a country like United Kingdom, I can't even believe it, David, that it's actually happening.
yeah.
Is it that the UK society itself is collapsing? You rightly said that people haven't assimilated themselves; they haven't even come into the proper format, which is
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah.
Pakistan is living the way they want, their customs, their mosque, everything.
Yep.
But what I see in Stammer is very, very uniquely, he's talking a few things like these are racist thugs or whatever you want to call it, thugs. And then
Yep.
he calls up something else, then he calls up something else, and then this goes on and on. I mean, it's one has got to be realistic about all these things. I mean, you
Yeah.
can do this in a third world country, but trying to get and beat up your own people, and the original, English, if you can call them that way, and taking a side of the immigrants. I mean, I don't think he will survive long politically if he goes like this. What is your view, David?
Yeah, that's a good observation. I think that the thing that he did that I think offended most people, including Elon Musk, was he made a statement, Stormer, saying that he stood with the Muslim community. And that was so well judged, because he should have said, I stand with all communities. All communities should be made safe. But he didn't do that. He didn't say that. And now what we're seeing is the absolute irony, Suresh, of British patriots are turned into the enemy. And migrants who have no love of this country, hatred of this country, contempt for this country, they're the people the government's standing by. And I mean, I'm aware of a demonstration that took place in the centre of London, outside Downing Street, Sunday past, a week ago. And these people were very alarmed at what was going on. And the police, I mean, there was pensioners there, disabled people there. They were being arrested. So British patriots are in jail. Meanwhile, the prisons are being emptied of those who should be in jail. And you've got to wonder, as you say, it's like North Korea, it's like China, and it's happening here in the UK. And I think we have a very volatile country, a prime minister who's completely clueless, but he does have the power of the establishment. So he's got the police, he's got the army if he wants the army as well. So all of this leads to great concern and great alarm amongst not just, well, British people, other groups, other minority groups, say British Hindus, for example, Jewish people. How must they feel when they see a prime minister who's only interested in Muslims?
Yeah, David, I mean that's a question I had too. In fact, I was coming to that part of it, and then you beat me to it. He says, Starmer says he will give 28 million pounds, if I got the number right, for
Yep,
protection of
28. Yep,
mosques. I
yep.
mean, I didn't see this kind of proactiveness, or at least when the previous British government was there, to talk about the fact that we're going to protect the temples that are being vandalized.
Yep.
The Indian High Commission that was attacked. We
Yes.
never saw such proactive policing then, calling them, thugs and other things. I mean, these were all the two-tier policing that is being talked of now. I mean, it is laughable, actually. We in India are having a good laugh at the British right now, the UK government saying that, look, this makes
Yep.
Modi look like God almost. That is what it
Yeah.
is.
Oh, I wish we had Modi in charge of the UK. I would be so much, things would be so much better. We do have, as you say, 28 million for mosques, nothing for synagogues, nothing for temples, nothing for churches, and maybe even more significantly than that, nothing to protect little summer schools where little girls are being slaughtered. Nothing for that. So that's what I get so angry about. It's our taxes, and all he's doing is he's lavishing that tax on an ethnic group which hates us. And I mean, furthermore, the two tier care, which is the hashtag that's done very well on Twitter, that does expose the essential hypocrisy that there's one standard of policing for British patriots and another standard of policing when it comes to Muslims living in the UK. And that's at a policing level. At justice level, we've got two-tier justice. Consider this. Some of those who were convicted of rioting. Now, I don't agree with anyone rioting. Rioting is wrong. Breaking the law is wrong. But some of those who were arrested 2 nights ago have been brought to court and sentenced within 48 hours. The guy who killed the 3 little girls, his case comes to court next year. Next year, but 48 hours for British patriots? I'm sorry, that's two-tier justice.
So, David, the question obviously is I was reading a survey report on one of your news channels in the UK saying that a large number of the original British, now I want to call them original British, I mean, they are supporting not the rioters, but at least the thought process behind the rioting, saying that, look, if you come as an immigrant into a country, learn to live with us. Don't
Yep.
go yourself and make an island of yourself. Don't get into a cocoon and say,
Yes.
we are like this. We won't change. We won't get in touch with you. We won't speak your language, as you said. But
Mm-hmm.
the larger question that comes up often is, I mean, this Britain has been welcoming people with open arms. I think one of the incentives, and I'm speaking to one of the Conservative Party leaders of Indian origin yesterday, and I was questioning her, saying, "You people are actually creating a magnet. You are giving thousands of pounds for people who do nothing.
Yes.
Okay, the original thought process may have been good. Okay, you have elderly retirees and all these kind of people, but now your biggest attraction is people with large families coming on the boats, landing up and wanting this money. The
Yeah.
British taxpayer is funding all this. My question obviously would, why are you complaining that China is taking over your business? Because you're uncompetitive. You're paying people who can actually work but don't want to work yet get the money. Am I right, David, on this point?
Yep. You're absolutely right. It's an insane policy that's being pursued. And what we're doing is we are welcome. I mean, we have been traditionally a relatively welcoming country, but I think if someone comes into a country, they have certain obligations, and that's been completely forgotten. Obligations should be to, as you rightly point out, to assimilate, to integrate into the culture, to respect the indigenous culture, to respect its laws. But that's not happened. We've got big chunks of the UK, and we've seen it on TV, video of it, and you may have seen it as well. Muslim gangs with swords, machetes. This is just traditional British life now. But because what's happened is we've imported people from some countries, some very savage countries, and they've just brought their savagery with us. They're not contributing to the British economy. I mean, I would make the distinction between, for example, my many Indian friends that I've got in the UK who have come here, built successful businesses, contributed to the economy, created employment. I would contrast that with, for example, the Bangladeshis, Pakistanis who have come here and who just basically live on welfare, which comes from our taxes. That's not sustainable. And that's the biggest growing population demographic we've got. So it's crazy. We have to stop. And maybe this is a moment where the UK has a choice. It stops the mass migration, it starts to deport some people, or it just collapses. And that's, I think, where we are. Honestly, that's the state of it. It's that serious because, in a way, whilst I don't want to see anyone getting hurt and I don't want to see violence and anything like that, it's also helpful to see the nature of the problem. The world has seen the reality that people like me have been talking about for many years, Suresh. We've known these problems have been here. But now it's out in the open. We absolutely see it. But the most awful, sickening thing is that the government is taking the side of the people who hate us, and that's and threatening us. If you are British and you retweet something, if you retweet something the government doesn't like, you could be going to jail for 10 years. There was a 74-year-old pensioner who I think posted something on Facebook. The police came round to her house, kicked the door in, and off she goes. And that's North Korean, and that's what we've got in the UK. So yeah, it's difficult times.
Well, the Rwandan plan is out of the window. That I don't know if it was a sensible thing, but at least there was some plan. But there's no plan now, isn't it? I mean, the biggest part of it, as you rightly said, are people who are indulging in violence are let off. There's no police when they are there. The two-tier policing system, so-called, seems to
Yeah,
be working for them. But when
yep,
the British people are protesting, they're called football hooligans and what all kind of words they use. I mean,
yep.
how long do you think Starmer can survive this? Politically, within the Labour Party, and David, I'm looking at from a bigger perspective, within the Labour Party, is there going to be an awakening and asking Starmer to go? Because he is proving to be a disaster. I mean, he's another Biden in the making, if you ask me, not in that sense of the word, but he's kind of, if he goes away, possibly the problem can also go away. Am I right?
I don't think there will be an awakening in the Labour Party. I think what people need to understand is that Starmer is probably one of the more moderate within the Labour Party. If you understand me, the Labour itself is. I mean, we've seen it with the protests, the pro-Gaza protests, for example, and that's because they want to pander. Everything about Labour is about pandering to the Muslim community. So Labour's not going to change. And by the way, Labour's in government because it got 20% of the vote, 20% of the vote. 80% of British people didn't vote for Labour. They got their massive majority because people got fed up with the Conservatives and just didn't bother voting. But we shouldn't underestimate the fact that a large percentage of the British people right now, as we talk, did not vote for Keir Starmer. And we will not be treated, you know, in the way that he's going to treat us. So it really is time for British people to stand up and say, no, you do not represent us. You are not being fair. You are and Elon Musk called him out on it. I mean, that's why there's been great upset in Labour circles over the fact that the guy that owns the biggest social media company in the world, X, pointed out that he's hashtag two-tier care. So, but now they're talking about, can we close Twitter down in the UK? Just imagine, more North Korea. I know, you can't make it up.
No, that's true. That's true, David. Actually, we are all having a good laugh at it because, as somebody was telling me yesterday in one of the discussions we were having on UK, they said the British messed up India and left, and now they're messing up their own country. I mean, come to think of it, I mean, here you have a very robust democratic system in the UK, something that we picked up to make our constitution, our
Yes.
judiciary system, were all built by the British. But when you look at the way the British government is functioning today, it looks as if we are going back to the 17th century. You're welcoming some people with open arms, some people who come there deliberately just to live off on somebody else's taxes. The question is, Taylor Swift, I saw one concert being cancelled today. I mean, where are we going to go into this? I mean, is Britain now changing the demographic profile of some cities, some big towns in UK is changing and changing rapidly. We've seen that happen in India. We see the Bangladeshis who came in from 1971 onward, settling down in many Indian cities and states. And today the demographic profile has changed. Come to think of a larger question I need to ask you is, we saw what happened in Bangladesh. Will something like that repeat in the UK? I know, and it's thinking aloud.
Well, you know, who can tell? But you're right. There's the demography in certain British cities. London would be a good example, but Birmingham, there's quite a few. And within some of those cities now, they are minority white cities. So the biggest demographic is essentially, it's the Muslim demographic. That is the biggest one. So that's the if you like, the existential crisis we face. We've imported a fast-growing demographic that is contemptuous of us as a country. And not only that, but it behaves in the UK the same way as it behaves in India and every other part of the world. It behaves the same. They don't change. And yet, you know, I mean, I put up on my social media feed yesterday a couple of videos of British police, unbelievable videos of British police making a statement to the camera, and they're completely surrounded by Muslims. And they introduce the conversation by using a Muslim phrase. So honestly, I mean, I can understand people outside having a laugh. I get that. The thing that frightens me most is I've always felt that, well, the most important thing we have is free speech. If we can at least speak up, Suresh, we can at least have a conversation, that's good. But this government, I think, is clamping down on free speech. So if you stop people from speaking freely, what options do they have? You have to think about that. And that's what Keir Starmer hasn't figured on. He doesn't think that, I mean, I was in London 2 weeks ago at a big rally in Trafalgar Square in the centre of London. And there was about 50,000 people there. And they were all very, you know, waving British flags. And it was really good, peaceful, just people saying, we want our country back. We didn't vote for mass migration. We want that to end. That was it. Tell by Tommy Robinson. And all of a sudden, Tommy Robinson is now the enemy of the state. They're absolutely out to destroy him. But they don't realize there's millions of Tommy Robinsons. He's not the only one. And we're going to have to stand up for our country, or we will not have a country. Like, just final point I want to make to you. Last night was, when we were speaking yesterday, there was lots of speculation. There was going to be, I think, up to 100 demonstrations last night. There was none. There was absolutely none. They were the hard left were absolutely suckered into coming out to protest, and there was nothing happening. But it's interesting today, as we record this, the BBC are talking about the fact that, last night we saw people taken to the street to stand up to racism. That's what the BBC are saying. But if you actually watch what they were doing, they weren't. They were standing up for open borders and mass migration. That's the people who are out on the streets. No police thuggery against them. Oh no, that's fine. So we have, honestly, I've been around a long time in my life, and I've never seen a situation like this, which feels like a tinderbox. It feels like it could explode. And I don't want that. I don't want to see that. But if a government won't listen to its people, I put it to you, Suresh, if the government won't listen to the people, and we're the majority, what's going to happen? That's the question.
Well,
and we're going to see the answer.
The question is obviously, sometimes I wish you would think that we would need a Margaret Thatcher or somebody like that, or even going back to Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Why did we fight the Second World War? Is this what we fought the Second World War for? But I think, David, if you look at the bigger picture, of course, no comments on BBC because we kicked BBC out of India long ago, and we know what they do. A small
Yeah.
incident in India, they would blow it up into big news against Modi, but something that happens in UK, they don't talk about it. They say it's thugs that are there. They don't talk about the Muslim gangs out there. They don't talk about the eggs that were thrown at the Indian High Commission in London. Nothing of that sort. The Indian tricolour being pulled down. Imagine that happening in the British High Commission in Delhi, and what kind of reaction would BBC have? Anyway, leaving that aside, David, as we come to the end of this conversation, my main question to you would be: it is not just UK, isn't it? France, Germany, and many other European countries, even Canada, are today being swamped. And we see similar demonstrations happening in Canada, saying housing is a crisis, ask the migrants to get out. Now, I think the only exception in Europe must be Poland, which stood up and said, nonsense, we are not going to allow all this. Do
Yes.
you think time has now come for the British people? And when I say British people, I mean the people who were there before, the original British people, if you want to call them that.
Yeah.
They wanted to stand up and say, look, we don't want this boat people to land up here. Why don't they go to Saudi Arabia? Why don't they go to Oman? Why don't they go to Qatar, for example, and stay there? Why do they want to come to UK and even other European countries? What's the big magnet that is drawing them here? That is my question, David, as we sign off this conversation. Would love to hear from you on this subject.
So, and thank you for the question. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's the entire West. It's as you say, apart from Poland, maybe Hungary, apart from those couple of Eastern European countries, the entire West is being swamped. It's the same problem. And the problem, the bigger difficulty is we have political leaders in the shape of Keir Starmer or Emmanuel, Macron in France, or whoever these are weak people. And there is a maxim that whenever you have weak leaders, you get hard times. That's the maxim. Weak leaders, hard times. So we're having hard times because of weak leaders. If you would give us Prime Minister Modi, if we could have him for a couple of years, and we'd give you Starmer, then I think we could solve our problems. But that might give you problems as well. It probably wouldn't. But I mean, the UK and the rest of the West have to face into this challenge, and they have to rise up.
Yeah. David, wonderful speaking to you. I don't know whether we can afford to give Modi away because we ourselves are facing a bigger crisis here. We have a boiling Bangladesh next door. We have Pakistan, where the prime minister got elected, got thrown out. We have Nepal, where the entire monarchy got wiped out in a single go. We have Sri Lanka, which just came out of a crisis. We have Maldives, which had a pro-Indian government, got thrown out. I think India is almost like Israel now. I mean, surrounded by all demons all around it, and trying to attack it. And we are facing a similar situation. I mean, come to think of it. But I think as a neutral observer, and I have nothing to do with UK, but I mean, I appreciate, David, that people like you are actually asking people to get up, smell the coffee, and understand what's happening.
Yeah.
That is the problem there in UK, is that if you allow mass migration, there will come a time when the proverbial camel will enter the tent and the Arab will be out of it. And that, I think, is what is happening in the UK right now. And I think people of UK, we Indians, of course, we understand the predicament that you're facing. We are swamped by the Rohingyas and others who come down to our country. If something like that happens, if somebody comes and takes jobs of the Indians, I think we would react very, very similar. And I think that's what the British people are doing. And we sympathize with you. And I think we Indians understand how things go from here.
Yeah.
David, wonderful speaking to you. And thank you for sparing your morning in UK right now and speaking to us at SM Media. I mean, I know we are taking this picture to a bigger audience in India to understand, because out there, the likes of BBC and others won't show you this kind of the story. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suresh. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Bye-bye.